Hello everybody, it's Hiram Balvern again. Trying things a little bit different today. Got myself a newer ring light and, see about going back and forth with a couple of different camera views. Just because, well, why the hell not? But today I'm going to do a quick review of Unnatural Acts. That is the book number 2 in the Cases of Dan Shamble, Zombie PI. This series is a continuation of detective stories with private detective Dan Shamble, starting with Death Warmed Over, which is the first book. Obviously, Dan is a zombie, come back to dead after his own murder. His girlfriend, Cheyenne, Ghost, and his lawyer partner, Robin Dyer. If you read the first book or happened to catch my review of the first book, you know that in this version of modern day Earth, they are in New Orleans, where something called the Big Uneasy happened several years before the first story. We'll get into the specifics of what, because it's very convoluted. Just a lot of right things at the right time or wrong things at the wrong time that led to, well, what they call the Big Uneasy, and zombies, ghosts, werewolves, vampires, all those supernatural creatures becoming real. As far as the story itself, murder, mayhem, political strife, something called the Unnatural Acts Act. I will say, though, the pros for me, personally, I found these books fun. They're silly, not like overly silly. It's not like Ernest or the Three Stooges, but they don't take themselves too seriously. So it's a detective story, a noir or noir light, perhaps. The cases definitely take on not the side you would typically expect for the typical cases, because you're not dealing with just a divorce case, for instance. In the first book, the divorce case involved a werewolf in Heaton. In this particular book, some of the cases include the ghost of William Shakespeare, who had his theater or his stage burned down, lost his props. You have a zombie who sold his heart and soul so that he can help a nun trying to help the Unnaturals. Now he's trying to get those back. You have a golem looking to get civil rights for other golems. Things like that, while to some degree you may have some typical cases for a detective, they're going to have a little sillier, more fantasy-esque element to them. For me now, the cons is, even though the cases come to satisfying conclusions at the end of the book, they all seem to converge into being related to each other in some way. This isn't like an episode of House where talking to one of the other doctors about a completely different case suddenly gives him that aha moment, and what's relevant here can help him here. No, these cases are somehow usually overlapping, and what's happening here is related to and tied to what's happening in another case. And it's not a bad thing, but I would like to see some of these cases, or more of these cases, have little to do with each other than it's the same person trying to solve them. The other thing is just the fact that they're all resolved. That's not to say I don't want mysteries solved, but one of the things that Dan, who's narrating these stories for us, the reader, says in the first book is he talks about how detectives have multiple cases they're working on all the time. And it seems odd to me that in both the first and second book, every case that gets introduced in that book is solved by the end. I would love to see one or two of these cases not get resolved in the book it's introduced, but carry on to a second or maybe even a third book. I'd love to see this story, instead of just being a bunch of self-contained adventures, I would love to see them be an overarching story. I mean, hell, the first book he solves his own murder. That would have been nice to have that being an overarching plot for him to solve his murder and Cheyenne's death, not in the first story, but several stories down the line. Because that is a big, big thing for a detective to have to solve his own murder because he came back from the dead. But to have that resolved in the first story is, while nice resolution, like I said, I would prefer it to stretch out a little more. A big bad, if you will. But I'm going to summarize real quick. I find them enjoyable. I think it's a great blend of the cozy fantasy style and the detective noir story. Like I said, I would call it a noir light because it's not so deep and dark. It's a little silly at times. I mean, come on. Dan's best friend is a cop who loves to tell not quite off-color jokes, but little kid jokes or dad jokes about zombies and vampires. And, well, for instance, the old joke he probably told as a kid about why the skeleton didn't go to a scary movie, because he didn't have the guts. That would be the kind of silly joke that Magoo would tell. But like I said, great stories, fun. I love the blend of the kind of the supernatural fantasy element with the detective story. You know, that sets it apart, makes it feel unique because it's not one or the other. So I would give this a 3.5 out of 5. Like I said, if you like either of these genres, you'll probably enjoy these books. So thank you for watching my video, and as always, happy reading.